Hello beautiful, welcome to another video. In this video we're going to talk about the pros and cons of taking online classes. Now I am going to try to make this like a how-to video. If you've never taken online classes, you're looking to do so, I'm going to provide a bit more information from that standpoint. I take online classes at Arizona State University and their system is a little more accelerated, but I have taken online courses during COVID at my first university, but also at two other universities that had a system. So I feel like I can kind of explain how online classes work. However, if you are someone who is seeking out a college for online classes, I would recommend ASU, not sponsored, but the classes are mostly accelerated. So check it out if you're interested, but with that though, I would also recommend if you are looking for a new school, make sure it's accredited. One of the universities that I attended briefly for a semester, turns out it wasn't accredited. So make sure that, especially if you plan on using those classes, those credits somewhere else at a different institution, make sure that your courses and your classes are accredited, especially before you pay however much money to get into it. Make sure it's an accredited school. That's the major first thing. Second of all, the pros of online classes that you might expect is it can work around your schedule if you have a busy job or a specific job that meets at a certain time and you can't really work around like going to school like a regular person. I don't want to say regular person, but going to school at like daytime, and if you work nights or you work days and then go to school at nights, maybe in-person classes just aren't an option right now. Online classes can be really helpful. However, make sure that you know whether the classes are going to be asynchronous or synchronous. So synchronous classes meet at a specific time. Even though you're online, you still have to log in at a certain time. Asynchronous, you don't have to. It can be self-paced, or it can just be that the professor or the university posts the content, you go through it each week as you're supposed to, submit the assignments, and you're good. So definitely check out which type of classes they're going to be, and you can also like email admissions or email the professor themselves if you're not sure. Also check attendance as well. Some schools will kind of check in to make sure you're actively doing your work, so definitely kind of test that and check that. The universities I've gone to weren't necessarily like checking every day to make sure you were logging in, but one of the schools did kind of check sporadically to make sure you were on top of your tasks and you were submitting things. I think the standard is that if you don't submit things within like the first 2 or 3 weeks, you're like unenrolled, because it's kind of obvious that you're not doing anything. But again, it depends on the university, so make sure you do your research on the school that you're planning to attend. Second of all, I personally find that with online classes, you have a bit more freedom. So yes, you have the content, yes, you have due dates most of the time, you have assignments, you have discussions, but there's a little more freedom to work on things at the time that works for you, and that goes with the schedule part. But at least with like the way my classes are set up, where I can see the content for the following week, I sometimes have the opportunity to work ahead if I'm able to, or to kind of browse through different parts of the lessons. There's multiple materials. Again, this is going for specifically for ASU, but there's multiple materials that are available, and I found that I don't necessarily have to use all of those materials. They're there for my benefit, and so I'm able to kind of pick and choose which assignments or which materials are going to work best for me depending on my learning style. So I find that very valuable. I also feel like online professors, take this with a grain of salt, online professors might be a little bit kinder when it comes to grading. So with some online classes, in terms of assignments, exams, you're pretty much told what to do, right? And I feel like with online classes, because they expect a variety of people, like international students, people from different backgrounds, to be enrolled, they're a lot nicer when it comes to grading, again, in my experience. So things that maybe wouldn't fly in an in-person class, that maybe expects you to have like a perfect essay written or a perfectly done assignment, I feel like online professors kind of just want you to do the assignment to the best of your ability, and they'll provide feedback, but I feel like the grading in general is just a little bit nicer. Like, they're a little more open-minded to give you a better grade. I'm not gonna say that's true for all colleges at all, but I feel like the people who typically take online classes are people who have a lot on their plate already, or they have responsibilities apart from school. And I feel like when you're in person and the professor just sees a sea of students in front of them, you're just kind of a student, right? And so they don't necessarily, I don't want to say understand, but aren't fully aware of the other aspects of your life that might be contending with your school. Whereas online, I feel like it's a general consensus or idea that you are someone who can be from any background. You might be in the army, you might be like a single mom, or someone who's working full-time and taking care of a family, and I feel like there's a little bit more leniency in how they grade and how they approach the grading, and that can be beneficial. Again, take that with a grain of salt. It's not necessarily going to be true for all schools or even all professors, but in my experience, I feel like they're just a little bit nicer. So that's another pro. This is going to be more of a con, and this again leans more into my online classes. In the same breath of saying that the grading can be easier, the amount of assignments can be a lot more, and it can be a lot more overwhelming. And I say this because I feel like when I was going to school in person, we had lectures. We could sit in a lecture for like an hour and a half, and 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, and we might have an assignment that we are expected to work on for a week, maybe within the next few days, but usually there's a lot of time between starting the material and then the exam or the assignment. For online classes, because a majority of them, not all of them, a majority of them are expecting to keep you on track and trying to keep you in that system of structure, there's going to be more things to do every week. So again, this is with ASU. For the ASU online, I am taking 3 classes. The classes are 7.5 weeks, so they are accelerated classes. However, on top of that, every single class has assignments and discussions every week and exams every 2 weeks. That's the structure of these particular classes. I'm not saying all the classes here are like that. There are also, I think, regular paced classes at ASU. I think that would be session C, if I might be mistaken about that, but this is just from my experience for the past 2 semesters. It can be a lot. If you're not prepared for that amount of course load, take it slow. Try out one course if you can, maybe, or take the minimum amount of courses you can for your first semester or session or whatever it is of online classes, so you can get a hang of it, because it helps you understand how things are going to work going forward. For example, the college that I went to prior, that wasn't accredited, their structure for all of the courses, the entire college worked like this, where all the courses had things due on the same day, same time, Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Regardless of your time zone, regardless of, like, that was the time. Well, in a time zone, but it had a specific date and time for everything, and it was the same structure for pretty much all the classes. For a larger institution, it's likely that your professors aren't going to follow the same schedule. They are going to have different days, different times, different due dates, and you really have to get a handle on your time and how you're going to work around things. So yeah, I feel like along with the nicer grading, and yeah, you might have exams or quizzes that are open book, you might have some that are proctored, and it could be easier in that way. You also are probably going to have a lot more material to read and to cover. In my experience, the lectures aren't as common on online, and if they are, they're like either broken up into smaller chunks, or it's just not as engaging. And I would say that's a con. I feel like in person, you have the ability to engage with the professor. You can make eye contact, you can raise your hand, you can ask questions, you can hear other people's questions, and you learn that way. And I found that very stimulating to learn in that way. Especially when other people would ask a question that I was getting to but hadn't really formed in my own mind. That was really healing, and like, it helps me in person. Online, you just have the professor in front of you, and yes, you can contact them, you can email them, but it's not the same. It's not as like in sync as in person. So that's a con. If you're someone who kind of learns auditorily and the input of other people helps you, then online classes is going to be definitely a struggle at first. But yeah, so the frequency of assignments can be more. The quantity or the amount of reading, the amount of it really does feel like you're self-learning, but it's in a time crunch. You're being self-taught essentially. Like many of my classes that have been social studies related or history related have all had hundreds of pages of readings. And one particular class does say, hey, you don't have to read all of these, but you should skim. But for someone who has a full-time schedule and 2 other classes, even skimming every single resource is not possible. And I talk about this in my other video about how to succeed in accelerated courses, but sometimes you get to the point where you just have to do the bare minimum to get the grade, and it is what it is. You do your best do your best bare minimum to get the grade, but it gets to a point where it can be too much, and handling it with other classes may not be as feasible in like a certain week, or with online classes as well, it really depends on the class, but it can feel like you're starting so much quicker. Even in person you start pretty quickly, but some classes may give you like a week of a buffer. Other classes might start right away. Like you have the syllabus quiz, and then you're in. So you really have to know how to manage your time. You really have to know how to kind of set up a schedule for yourself. With online as well, it's really down to your own discipline, right? Like in person, you should go to the class, but you're able to go to the class. You know to go to the class. You know when your professor mentions, hey, we have an exam next Tuesday, okay, I have an exam next Tuesday. Not all professors did that, but you have that benefit of in person, like your professor reminding you. Online, yes, you have the due dates, yes, you have the to-do list of all the assignments, but there's nothing really yelling at you like, hey, this is due tomorrow, unless your professor is really nice, because I have some professors like this, and they'll email or send out an announcement the day before, a few days before, like, hey, just so you guys know, this is due. That's helpful, but don't rely on that, because I have had times, even as on top of things as I tend to be, where I put off one thing because I'm gonna get to it or whatever, and then life happens and work happens, and I get home and I want to sleep, or I wake up the next day and I sleep in a little too long, And the thing that I left to do the day that it was due ends up being a lot more than I thought it was gonna be. And it's pain. So yeah, you have to be really responsible in online classes. You have to be responsible in all classes, but online classes specifically, you gotta stay on top of things. You gotta have your own system of notifications, and you gotta know what's going on, because it's so much easier to like have deadlines past you, and if you're not on top of it, it's gone. There goes that grade. However, again, I can't really compare too harshly with in person because it really depends on your professors. Some of my online classes are really lenient or kind in terms of, some of my professors, I should say, are really lenient in that they give you a space of time after the due date to get things done. So that's really nice. Some professors in person as well will give you like, okay, you have like 3 days after, but they'll deduct points, and that happens here as well. So again, try to be disciplined, try to stay on top of things, but also communicate with your professor. You don't necessarily have the option to go up to your professor after class and be like, hey, I need help with this, or I need like, but you do have an email system that you can email them. You might have a discussion board where you can reach out to them or ask a question. You don't have that sense of community in the same way, which is another con. We have discussions, but it really doesn't feel as natural as talking in a group setting. So that's kind of a bummer, and it's really annoying with the discussion posts, how robotic it feels like you have to be, especially when it's like there's requirements put in place, like you have to have this many words in your response, and then your response to someone else has to have this many words, or like you have to include 2 or 3 sources in this discussion post. I will be so glad to be done with discussion posts. But yeah, however, I have had certain classes where people reach out and send like a mass email to everyone, and they're like, oh hey guys, like we can all have this Discord, and you know, I never join them because I don't have time for that. But if you are someone who benefits from having a community of people that you can talk to about a class, or have someone else explain a subject to you that's not the TA or the professor, then definitely do that. Either be the person to reach out to other people, or you know, if someone creates a group, then join it. Yeah, that could be really helpful. Exams. Pros and cons. Exams, quizzes. Okay, so I mentioned it before, but pros, if it's an open book exam, it's really helpful. It's really helpful to have like your notes and stuff in front of you. You may still have a time limit, but it's super helpful to just be like, you don't have to memorize. Not for all classes. Some classes have the con, which is the proctored exam, which is annoying. Proctored exams are not fun, but some of my classes have allowed us to do cheat sheets, which I find is really fun, which also happens in person. I think with the proctored exams, it's a little bit annoying because in reality, in real life, like you're not gonna have your professor watching you individually every single moment of your test, but with a webcam, you know, whoever's on the other end can see you. And I had a situation where there was a glitch in one of my classes. It had been open book the entire semester, and then the final exam ended up being proctored. I emailed the professor after the fact because I was like super upset. Like, why is it suddenly proctored? But during the proctored exam, I was like using my iPad for my notes because every other exam has been notes. And then the person on the other end flags it, and they have me turn off my iPad, turn off my phone, all that stuff, which I wasn't using my phone anyway. But it was this whole like thing, and it's just, it can be a little strict at times and frustrating. Obviously it is a proctored exam, it's going to be, but you know, feeling like you're being watched is a little frustrating. However, I will say a pro of taking your exam in your own space, like you're not gonna be bothered by other people like tapping pencils or whatever, and you can be as annoying as you want. It's just the proctor on the other end. And usually I think as long as it's like clear you're not talking to someone else, you can talk out loud and you can kind of reason and like do things that maybe wouldn't be normal during a regular exam, right? Like maybe you might have a thing of coffee right next to you. Although I think they say in the rules like what you should or shouldn't have. But you know, it's a little bit more free. It's like if you're not a good test taker or you get test anxiety and being surrounded by people doesn't help, then having an online class and online exams might be more helpful, because it's just like, all right, cool. You know, it's just gonna take X amount of time and I can go through each question. I can talk it out loud. I have times where I will read the sentence over and over again. This is like I feel like this is a newer phenomenon, but honestly it might be just how my entire childhood has been. But more recently I'm noticing like I'll read a sentence and I'll realize that I did not process or understand anything that I just read. And so I've had multiple times during my proctored exams where I'm reading and then I'm reading certain parts out loud and just like trying to process before I get to an answer. So like it's a little bit helpful, because in person that would be annoying to have, you know, you being the person like read, watch, like saying stuff out loud would be, you know, kind of upsetting to other people, but that's a little bit of freedom as well. I can't think of anything else. If I do, I will definitely make a second video, but if you have some ideas of like pros and cons of online classes, definitely list them below. If you have questions, definitely list them below as well. I am almost done with college, y'all. It's crazy. I'm gonna have a degree back here like in a few weeks. It's so exciting. And I am like so kind of anal about, that's not the best word, but like I've been checking my graduation dashboard because my advisor, contrary to many college experiences, my advisor has been amazing. She has been so great in getting me amazing classes, recommending amazing classes, making sure that the classes that I have to take are the ones I have to take. And I've been checking my degree audit repeatedly just to make sure, because I'm like, I know that these are the classes I'm supposed to take. I know that I've taken all the classes I needed to take, but I need to see that graduation bar all green to know that I'm actually graduating. Like, I've paid for my graduation, I've gotten my tassels already, I have my GPA, I have like all these things. I have 2 more weeks of class, and yet I'm still like holding my breath, like, am I actually graduating? I think I am. Like, I'm a transfer student, so that's why I'm so worried. But I've like every session so far I've talked to my advisor and I've made sure she knows I want to graduate this spring. I want to graduate this spring. I want to graduate this spring. So what do I need to do to graduate this spring? So I'm sure I'm fine, but oh my goodness, if you are also graduating, definitely tell me down below, because oh my goodness, it feels so good to be done. For me, not fully done, but still just one chapter of life, you know, that little film thing closed, and we're moving on. Yes. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.